Okay guys, Quentin coming at you from Cycle for Life again. Here we go. We got the bike coming together. We got the rear suspension all bolted down, Loctited, lubed, and greased. Even though these bolts don't move on these spherical heims, guys, you want to grease them. Not because they're moving parts, but because they'll rust. They're rusting parts. You don't want that stuff galling and getting hard to get out. So go ahead and grease them when you put those in. These, of course, you run grease in all around there because they're moving parts. And you don't want that stuff to get all ground up and, you know, chafe itself away. So you lube that stuff with grease, and you lube that stuff with grease, you lube this stuff with grease and Loctite. So the rear end's, you know, set up to go on. Now we got to do this swing arm. We got to get these bearings in. So these bearings are the ones that go in the actual front of the swing arm right there. This big sleeve here, these are actually the linkage bearings. They go down in that hole right there. So let's pick out a couple of sockets that we want to use to press. And again, I know some of you professional machinists are going to take exception to me pressing with sockets. Okay. If that's the best thing you got to bitch about today, go ahead and bitch. But I'm using black quality, you know, impact grade sockets, good quality steel. And if I mess them up, they're mine. So suck it. But what we're going to do is look for one that's just about too small to rub inside of that orifice. See that? We don't want to jam that up in there and gall that metal. So I got the biggest socket I could that'll press on this flat surface with the numbers on it and push it through and press it in without damaging that flat surface. You do not want to press on the rounded side. See that, guys? Let me get to a nice clean place on the floor where the camera can pick this up real good. See that flat surface with the lettering on it and the round surface with no lettering on it. Make sure you're pressing the right side of this thing, guys, okay? Press on your flats, okay? So this socket fits these bearings. I don't know how it's going to do on this one. Probably the next one up for that side. Yep, the next one up for that side. So we're going to use that socket for those bearings and this socket for these bearings. The trickiest part of this process, guys, quite honestly, the trickiest part of this is going to be doing it without scratching my new paint job. I probably should have put these bearings in before I painted it. I got a little ahead of myself. Put that right on that flat. Get it to where we're not cattywampus on that surface. See what we can do to start pressing this without gouging it up. See if we can get it, coax it to go in straight. See, like if that's rubbing down there where my finger's at, you're just going to tear all that up. You just want to start with your finger. See if you can get it to go in straight. Yeah, it looks like it's going in fairly straight. Let's test it. Let's pull it out and look. Yeah, looks like it's going in okay. Don't see it doing anything crooked or weird. Yeah, see, I'm just using my finger, guys. Not a lot of pressure. You don't want to go hog wild. You could heat that aluminum up if you had to, if you needed to get it to go, but it's not fighting me. It's going. So as long as it's not fighting me, I'm not going to worry about it. Let's see if we got enough room to slip this socket in there. I don't think we're gonna. I know we're not gonna. We're not gonna have enough room, guys. So what does that mean? Well, that means we're gonna start on the other side and use the press to do both bearings at the same time. Again, on the flat with the lettering to the outside, to the press face. You do not want to be pushing on that curved edge. Position your plate so that you got a full grip on the other side of that bearing. up straight. Get it started. Yep, it's starting. It's going in pretty easy. I'm not gouging up my metal. See down here, I'm not gouging this up. It's going in with my finger pressure. Don't even have to use the jack lever. See how I move that socket, guys? I readjusted that and I'm reapplying pressure. You do not want to have those sockets going sideways on you and cause an injury and flying out. So eye protection, nice flat bead surface here, nothing touching there. If this is grinding, you'll get a big angle. It'll be funny and crooked, and that socket will shoot out sideways and tear somebody's ass up. So make sure before you put a lot of pressure on these, everything is straight. And see how it's giving up and it's going in? You don't want it to fight you, okay? And then you check the other side. Get your finger out of there, too. Come on.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Two's right. That's exactly where it needs to be. So you get that centered on both sides because your bearing seals need to have room to keep dirt and oil and water out, and grease and oil in. You want to keep the grease in and the water and the dirt out. So I'm going to do the outside. Good high pressure, high load bearing grease for this, guys. You don't want cheap hardware store grease like that in your swing arm bearings. I mean, if that's all you got, you know, whatever. But when you can, you want to use the good grease. It just lasts longer. Yeah, looking good. If you want to save your good stuff for the bearings, then you put the cheap junk on the seals. Oh yeah. I'm going to put the swing arm in place on the bike and then tap those bearings in. It'd be nice to have a, you know, extra helper and a bunch of extra planks and sets and holding tools to get that press to work around that angle to there, but I'm not going to take the time to do all that. I'm just going to put it in the frame and tap them in after I get them in. So these bolts are torqued. I line the engine up with all the other mounts and put everything in loose. All your bolts are loose. I put the swing arm in and the swing arm dog plates in loose, everything loose. And then I went back and torqued them all. Torqued the swing arm, torqued this, torqued that, torqued everything. And what you wind up with, if you do it right, is a swing arm bolt that will slide through. Sometimes you have to tap it, that's okay, especially because it's painted to keep it from rusting. But you should be able to tap that through without too much resistance. So now that I got that done, the next tricky part is going to be getting the swing arm in the frame to fit in those slots. And it's not easy, guys. It's really not. Might have to take the shock back off, as a matter of fact. We'll see. We'll see if we can get it to fit. I'm going to grease this shaft. Okay, guys, you don't need real super duper quality grease on this. You're just keeping the shaft from rusting. If you saw the teardown video, you saw what the stock shaft did in the bike. I had to literally cut it out. Okay, so use cheap grease here. Just watch that other side of the hole. Just go look in the hole over there. If you line that up, everything will take care of itself.
Yep.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All the way through? Yep. Thank you, hon. Just gently let it hang. Whatever it hangs on is fine. Just thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, buddy.
No problem.
So yeah, we had problems getting those seals in on both sides, and it took two people to do it, but we got it. You saw how we did it. So now you got frame, seal, spacer and bearing, seal, swing arm plate, engine, swing arm plate, seal, spacer, bearing, seal, frame, and that's the sandwich that you go all the way across with. So I'll Loctite this and torque the living hooters out of it, but first I want to I'm gonna put this rag in here just as a pad to keep it from eating the paint up. Guys, I got all the bearings and all the seals and everything's in there. I got this bone over here going on. See how the bearings and seals and spacers are all greased and pressed in. There we go. Now these nuts, you want them Loctited. I know these have metal catchers on them, but still, you want all these Loctited, guys. You do not want this stuff coming apart in the middle of a moto. I'm telling you. Safety reasons, mechanical product quality reasons, whatever. You just don't want this stuff coming apart. So get a fair amount of Loctite on all these threads. I don't know if I showed it in the footage in the film or not, but I assure you I did this on the shock. I did this on these bolts here. They're all Loctited. You just can't afford to have that stuff coming apart. And if you ride it long enough, it will. And when will it come apart? When it's under the most load. In motocross, when is that? Landing off a big jump. So you're going to land off a big triple or a big double or a big tabletop, and boom, your back end's going to crunch down. So don't do that, guys. Be safe. Always think safety first, mechanical quality and reliability second, and having fun third and last. Because if you put fun before reliability and safety, you won't make it 30 years like I have, and you won't be making YouTube videos telling other people what to do. You'll be laying in a wheelchair somewhere all pissed off playing video games. So Loctite your bolts, guys. Alright. I'm going to go back and torque them. Guten tight. That's the torque setting. Guten tight. The swing arm pivot bolt. Guten tight. Tips for you guys: when you get these axle adjuster bolts put back in there, you want to go ahead and grease them up or anti-seize them or something, because these bolts do have a habit of getting seized up through the years. So I like to make sure I just go ahead and grease them. You're not really worried about them coming loose and moving while you're riding, because the axle's already pinched. You know, the axle's already tight. You're basically just wanting to make sure that the adjuster is always going to be there to work for you when you need it. And they sell kits where you can repair them and drill them and tap them and all that mess, but you know, why do all that if you don't have to? So what I do is I just go ahead and grease these threads all the way up, and then they last for a good long time. Okay, the next little trick for you guys is you want to, after you get everything assembled, you want to pull your top shock bolt and you want to test the swing arm as it strokes through. There's no play side to side. We can feel that, and there's no play up and down. It's tight. All the new bearings, there's no play in the suspension. All the play is taken out with all the new bearings and everything torqued down. But you want to also make sure that it's free to stroke through. You also want to make sure you're not binding. You don't have a spacer jammed up on a race, or you don't have one of these seals in here, you know, dragging so bad it can't turn. You just want to make sure everything's working. So pull your top shock bolt. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Perfect. Yeah, it feels good, guys. Little bit draggy and tight on the brand new seals, but that'll break in. You know, it'll loosen up after you ride it a time or two. But nice and smooth. There's nothing jagged or grabby or bindy. Everything strokes through the way that it should. So we got a good front end on this thing. We got a good rear end. We got the engine bolted in. Now, like I've said many times before, it's just a matter of hanging parts.